Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video today where I'm going to be looking back at the fan reaction to Fugitive of the Judoon. So yes, first off, apologies that this is coming a week later than it probably should have done, just due to my birthday and lots of other stuff going on. It meant it didn't really happen during last week, but I didn't want to miss out on it completely because it was a pretty big episode, so it felt like it was quite important to share what the fans thought on this episode, given it's probably been the most significant and substantial episode of the whole series so far. So if you haven't seen one of these before, go check out my playlist of the previous ones. I've done one for every single episode of Series 12, where essentially I look through all your comments on all the various videos I've done around each episode, and then kind of compile them down into a shorter amount that kind of represent everybody's different opinions on the episode to try and gauge the overall, whether the fans liked an episode or not, whether there are any major issues or whether it's overall quite good, and just kind of, delve in and give you guys a little bit of a moment on the camera as well, shall we say. So yes, as you can imagine, I had a lot of comments on this episode because it was just crazy and exciting and bonkers and so much going on, so many shocking revelations and everything. Like, it meant that it was just made for a video like this, really, and for people to comment about it and theorise about it. I may at some point do a Ruth theory video. I don't know quite whether I'll get to that or not, or in terms of like sharing your fan theories on Ruth, or where she fits in as the Doctor, where does she come up in the sort of random incarnations, I don't know. I might do a video on that, but we'll just have to see sort of how the time plays out, I think, for me. But yes, anyway, let's get stuck into this one now, shall we? So we'll take our first comment here, got it on my phone here, who comes from Clacker the Geek, who says, I don't think I have a grasp of what reality is after that. In my opinion, this is my favourite of the season so far because of its experimentation and not being afraid to do the unthinkable. However, I won't deny that it's confusing as hell. I thought the Judoon were portrayed excellently throughout, doing what the Judoon do. Jodie was great in this episode and her acting was on point. The companions had some great moments throughout, but it wasn't their absolute best episode. The Captain Jack reveal gave me a massive grin and the twist with the Doctor was mind-boggling. I think it's a Doctor from an alternative timeline, as then it can explain why the Doctor is from the past, as if it was before Hartnell, the TARDIS wouldn't be a police box and it would also be respectful to the past 57 years of character development. Overall, I've had the most fun talking about this episode out of all of Series 12. I'd give it 8.5 out of 10. So yes, thank you for your comment, lots in there. I think one of the best things is probably the one at the very bottom where you say, I've had the most fun talking about this episode out of any of Series 12, and I think that's the thing about Fugitive of the Judoon. It was an episode where everybody was talking about it. It was really one that lent itself to have fans theorising about what they think's going to happen, their predictions for the rest of the series and everything. It just felt like it gave us so much opportunity to do that, which I feel like really for the first time in the whole of the Chris Chibnall era and Jodie Whittaker era that we've really had that opportunity. So I think, that was really, really great among other things, but of course, lots of very good things about this episode. Now we've got a comment from TJDW, who has a few concerns about the way the Ruth Doctor storyline may go, shall we say, who says, really well written, quite well acted, and a fantastic first half, but with the introduction of this Doctor, I'm extremely uneasy about where they're going to go with this, and the fact is, if it's not an alternative universe Doctor, and if it is a pre-Hartnell Doctor, then it will undermine the entire show's history, as well as breaking the canon, and would be a stupid thing to do, and any explanation given as to how this is even a thing will inevitably not be good enough, and will be extremely underwhelming. Gotta hope for an alternative universe Doctor, because any other option is unacceptable unless they are the next Doctor and have some amnesia. Then I think that would be cool, because there hasn't really been done before, bar Peter Capaldi's eyes in Day of the Doctor. Because I thought the actress was cool and played it well, but the destruction of history and canon will not be accepted, and Chibnall will lose a viewer who passionately loves the show. So a bit of a warning there from TJDW. Thank you very much for your comment, who's, a little bit worried, shall we say, about the way this storyline might play out. I guess maybe since this comment he made, he or she, apologies, made, they obviously have, Chris Chibnall has said this is definitely the Doctor, not an alternative universe Doctor, so that's a little bit concerning potentially if they do go down the route of it being a pre-Hartnell incarnation. Personally, I'm not against that idea, but I know there are a fair few fans who are, and that's perfectly fair and acceptable. Like, I can completely understand that. So ultimately, I think this is an episode that kind of could go down in a lot of fans' estimations depending on how the whole Ruth storyline plays out, because I think as good as it was a brilliant reveal and shocking and exciting and such a twist in the episode, but if the ultimate end point of this storyline is terrible, then it's not going to really live up to the hype, I think, that we got around the time of it, shall we say. Now next a comment from Steve David, who says, well, honestly a much better episode than usual. Not necessarily a compliment. I like the idea of multiple realities converging together. I even like the alternate Doctor's swagger. If they use this multiverse and everything converging on the Doctor's timeline, then maybe we can hope for some more Captain Jack too. But please keep it as an alternative Doctor, not another regeneration we didn't know about. Alternate Doctor doesn't mind using weapons. Her companion/protector was at some point military due to his medal. So I'm thinking it's alternative universe/Doctor. So again, another sort of theory there, the idea behind the alternative universe Doctor that we were getting. Again, Chris Chibnall's ruled it out, but Chris Chibnall could be a liar, as we know. He can just lie. Stephen Moffat used to love lying about things about the show, so it wouldn't surprise me if he is lying and actually is an alternative universe Doctor. Like, it is completely the Doctor, but she's from an alternative universe. It sounds plausible to me. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that, won't we? Now, next up, a comment from Gough Fathers, who says this is one of those episodes that will be made by what precedes it. At first, I was like, who is the Ruth woman? Why is there so much focus on her? Already, a rewatch will completely change this episode for me. Hopefully, I'll enjoy it more as I'm now intrigued by her character. I'm in shock. I have no idea what to make of this. I'm really excited though, which is obviously a good thing. Is Ruth a parallel universe Doctor? Is she the other? Or Chibnall rewrite history, not one line? I'm intrigued. Fan theories are insane right now. Jack the lone sideman, WTF? I can't possibly write out all my thoughts here. There's too much to say. And I think, again, as I said before, that's the great thing about this episode was there was just so much in there that we can theorise about, because even we've got the Ruth and the Doctor, whole Doctor storyline thing, Timeless Child and whatever, like that's major. Then you throw in Captain Jack, you throw in Lone Sideman as well, and like there's just so much different stuff going on that you can theorise about, which is so exciting, I think. Now, next up, a comment from KB42 Moo. Thank you very much for your comment, who says, was literally losing my mind for the entire second half of the episode. I was thrilled. Gat called the guy faithful companion made me think Time Lords, and I thought the opening of the box was going to be the Chameleon Arch. Haha! I kept running through my head who Ruth might be, but I didn't think it would be the Doctor. And the Doctor digging up the TARDIS, I was screaming again. And Ruth, Doctor, does the whole introduction. I loved every moment. I haven't even talked about Jack yet. I watched with subtitles and the first line had American accent at the start, so I was on the edge of my seat going back and forth on whether it would be him or not, and then it was, and I yelled so loudly my flatmate came and asked what was going on. I enjoyed every moment of this episode. So yes, somebody here who very much liked this episode, and I think this wasn't an uncommon opinion, to be fair. I think the majority of people did really enjoy this episode, really enjoyed the shocks. Obviously really enjoyed seeing Captain Jack back. I mean, that was a pretty major selling point of the episode, shall we say. Well, wasn't beforehand, but then became that. And I think generally people were just so excited to see him, even if ultimately he didn't have particularly much to do in this episode, which was a bit of a shame, but he still was great to see him again. And yes, obviously the whole Ruth Doctor Shock thing was just major and so exciting, I think. Now we've got a comment here from Tom Rieger, who's a little bit frustrated with the negativity recently, shall we say. He says, I don't get it. The first two episodes of this series were great. Most reactors and most reviewers gave the first two episodes of the series very positive review scores. Then episode 3 and 4 happened and people turned around 180. Hated everything about the 13th Doctor and Chibnall as showrunner. Now, episode 5 is really great again and a lot of people are really happy with these episodes. First of all, I don't like people getting all up in arms and hating on Chibnall after episodes 3 and 4, while they had very good things to say about him on Spyfall Part 1 and 2. Second, episode 3 and 4 were both written by different people, not by Chibnall. Whereas the really good episodes, aka 1, 2 and now 5, were all written by Chris Chibnall. And this is a comment that I certainly share the opinion of, that actually in this series, whereas in series 11, generally the kind of worst episodes of the series were written by Chris Chibnall. In this series, it feels like the best episodes of the series have been written by Chris Chibnall, because he completely wrote Spyfall Part 1 and 2, which were both really good, I think, and an excellent start to the series, and also co-wrote, and I would assume had a pretty substantial role in Fugitive of the Judoon. Certainly all the Ruth Doctor stuff has got to have been written by Chris, and the idea of getting Captain Jack back was a Chris thing as well, so there was lots of Chris's content in episode 5. Which was really good as well. So I know Praxis maybe wasn't as brilliant. Obviously, these were comments were done before that episode came out, and it wasn't a terrible episode, and it was technically co-written by Chris. I personally can't see quite what Chris had to do with that episode because there was nothing archy in there, but you never quite know. But yeah, I think that we've got to kind of, to an extent, in my opinion at least, reevaluate Chris Chibnall's writing abilities or skills as a Doctor Who writer, because actually in Series 12 he's proved himself to be pretty damn good at it. Next up, we've got a comment from Darren79, who says, Jack really just turned out to be a mid-series teaser trailer. At that point, the episode was so lukewarm and I was bored. I reckon that Jack was planted to give some interest where there wasn't any elsewhere until it warmed up enough to be able to stand on its own. The fam are little more than set dressing currently. They stand in a line in this and the scene and say the same thing 3 different ways. My head really wasn't in the right place to like this episode, just a bit too batshite crazy, which is very Chibnall going on his TARDIS Torchwood work. I did keep shouting at the screen towards the end, swap TARDISes! I do reckon it's alternative dimension thing. The TARDIS wasn't a police box prior to An Earthly Child. The Doctor says that Gallifrey doesn't exist, gone forever, yet she still keeps going back there every time she isn't with fam, the single entity divided into 3. So yes, a few different criticisms of this episode. Somebody who didn't enjoy that as so much, shall we say, and that's totally fair enough. I do tend to agree, certainly in episode 5 of the fam are useless, pointless. They are one entity, just split into 3 people that have line sharing about. I think Praxis proved that it's possible to write 3 companions well because it felt like they were all individual characters and had stuff to do, which was so much better. But unfortunately in this particular episode, in the Judoon episode, it did not happen at all. And I do also tend to agree that Jack was basically just teasing later in the series rather than actually being a character worthwhile being there on his own as part of any sort of plot, particularly. Now, next up, we've got a comment from David Morris, who says, "This is absolutely massive. I can't even imagine how so many things could possibly fit into one finale. Like, there's so many protagonists already: Doctor, Ryan, Yaz, Graham, Master, Jack, Ruth Doctor, all most with different heavy implications. I hope they all get the time and appropriate resolution they deserve. I actually don't expect the Gallifrey/Timeless Child thing to be resolved this series. I rather think the finale will be the Sideman story, maybe mixed in with some Master madness, teasing that the mysteries of Gallifrey are still unresolved. Why couldn't one of these huge stories be in Series 11? Just imagine if Jack and the Lone Cybermen were the arc for Series 11 instead. We still have plenty to do with Gallifrey being destroyed again, and this gigantic mystery of the Time Lord's origin. There is enough material for multiple series, so I really hope they don't rush it and force it into a single series. Or if they do literally dedicate the rest of the series to it, I certainly wouldn't be mad. Well, first off, they obviously haven't dedicated the rest of the series to it because episode 6 had nothing to do with anything arc related at all. I think that David is on the right lines in terms of it being a Sideman finale. Certainly what Chris Chibnall said strongly implies, and we've seen from the trailers, that it's going to be a big space opera Sideman finale with loads of Sidemen, which is quite exciting. I kind of tend to agree that there's so much stuff they've got to try and fit into a finale that it would be a bit silly for them to not to try and resolve it all in one finale and not carry any of it over. I think the Timeless Child stuff and Gallifrey stuff will, to some extent, carry over into Series 13 because it just seems too much to try and do in one episode. And I do tend to agree as well that probably Series 11 could have benefited by having something a bit more arc-heavy in it. It was just Chris Chibnall's idea to have 10 individual episodes plus resolution that were basically all standalones to try and get people back into the show by just having it quite easy to get into and not have to have any background knowledge to be able to understand what's going on. Which ultimately I think worked in some ways, but also didn't work in other ways because it didn't give anybody a reason to keep watching, which I think would have really benefited if we'd moved something arcy from Series 12 into Series 11, but who knows. Our next comment here comes from Kuby, who says, "I really enjoyed this episode. It made top Spyfall Part 1 as my favourite episode this series. I loved how the Judoon was sort of used as a way to cover up all of the major twists in this episode. It's awesome seeing Jack back. I kind of get why they chose for him to return this episode. It gave the companions something to do while the Doctor was off doing stuff with the Doctor. It also felt like a red herring to make the viewer believe that this was the big thing to happen this episode. I also really enjoyed the Ruth incarnation of the Doctor. After the War Doctor, I feel like having a hidden incarnation isn't too much of a stretch, especially if there is a good reason for why she was forgotten. I think I'll be fine with whatever they end up doing as long as it doesn't retcon the entirety of Doctor Who. But I also think the fans should hold off on complaining until we actually know what's going on. This episode introduced a lot of things, but I feel it still held up as a great episode, and it has me very excited for the rest of the series." So yes, I think that's a common opinion across the board, is that this is clearly is a bit of setup for the episode, but it felt like an episode in itself. With all the twists and shocks, it was still very, very exciting, and does set things up very well for the future of the series, or the rest of Series 12. I think that the mention of the War Doctor is interesting, because it feels like there's people on both sides of the camp in terms of that. There's the people who are like, well, we had a hidden incarnation like 7 years ago, so do we really need to tread that ground all over again? But there's also people who are like, okay, we've had that, so therefore it's a more acceptable thing to do now, so let's do it again. And I tend to stray more into the camp of it's a fine thing to do, and it's not going to break the show if they do it. But I think we'll have to just see ultimately what they finally decide to do with it as to whether it really works or not. Now, we've got our last few comments here. The first one comes from ATB66, who says, "In terms of the wow factor and all-round quality of execution, leaving me genuinely excited for what's coming next, this is possibly the best Doctor Who episode I can remember. Hard to rate it alongside more self-contained ones like Blink, but wow, I love the shock value. This leaves such a mystery behind, one that is off the scale compared to the Hybrid or the Silence, and way more intriguing than Moffat's confusing Spaceman series. Well done, Chibnall, for gulling us all into a full sense of mediocrity. It would seem that our reaction to Series 11 was all planned so that we are taken off guard by Series 12. I have so many theories as to what is going on, but I won't say these here just in case they are right. Wouldn't want to spoil a future big reveal or conclusion, but I'm looking forward to seeing Alex Kingston back, whatever form they give her." I haven't heard anything about Alex Kingston, but there you go. If ATV66, if you know something I don't, please do comment down below about a supposed River Song return, I guess. But I haven't heard literally nothing about that. But yes, I'm so pleased to hear that this is another fairly common opinion, that people just love the excitement and shock factor of this episode. I know I mentioned it before, but it sort of just... the excitement that it gave for this episode, I think, was just really something we haven't seen in a long, long time. Probably since maybe the Series 10 finale, or the end of the Series 10 finale, possibly, I guess. But it's been a long time since we had some real exciting shocks like that. As he says, maybe Series 11 was just planned like that so that we would be surprised when it got to Series 12. I don't know. But yeah, it's certainly quite a popular opinion, this, I think, for the episode. And so we've got a comment here from David Blythe, who says, first comments on my video, saying thank you very much, saying very good video, addresses a lot of my pros for this episode and brings up cons I didn't quite consider. I definitely agree that this episode will guarantee you lots of content to come. So my overall thoughts are it was a story perhaps too concerned with how much time they still have in the series and crammed way too many twists into a story that could easily have had just one, that being Jack and his foreboding message about the lone Cyberman. And the rest could have been a routine Judoon runaround. Maybe Ruth should have been a recurring character that had a slow burn to the reveal, either in the first part to a finale or whatnot, or close to that like the 8th episode. I think it would have been better if Jack wasn't as detached from the action that he'd been the Fugitive. His cameo really limited him, and I get the feeling with the awkward lighting they were perhaps trying to cover how much the actor has visibly aged in recent years. So yes, this is certainly a school of thought that maybe there was a little bit too much in this episode, and it meant that firstly, Jack's cameo got overshadowed, and that there wasn't actually that much for him to do in this episode, as has been mentioned by a few other people. I wouldn't have hated the idea of having Ruth's storyline sort of play out over multiple episodes, but I struggle to see how she would have been introduced and then kept in multiple episodes, other than bringing her on as maybe a companion, I guess. That would have been quite a fun idea, maybe, if they had actually brought Ruth on as a companion for a few episodes and then suddenly she realises she's the Doctor, but then it would have maybe been a little bit hard to believe when she's gone in the TARDIS and then not remember that she's the Doctor. I don't know. But it just maybe feels like they could have done that a little bit better, but I also feel like just throwing it all into one super exciting episode kind of worked as well. And so finally, our last comment comes from Fatumshuk, who says, I like this one a bit more on second viewing than I did on the night, but I still think that Tesla is my standout episode of Series 12 so far. Its plot, script, direction, visuals and the guest actors were so much stronger in my honest opinion. Always good to see Captain Jack, but all he did was dump exposition, and as someone pointed out elsewhere, provides a handy means to get our three companions out of the way. He certainly didn't get the pick of the dialogue. Argh, they're coming for me always, the nano genes, really chivers. And even the charismatic John Barrowman can't inject much fit into that kind of stuff. Consequently, for me at least, the return of Captain Jack was a bit of a damn squib, so I wouldn't rate this episode as highly as I might have done otherwise. Fugitive gets 7 out of 10 from me, and Spyfall combined on 8 and Tesla still ahead with 9. So yes, there we go, somebody who certainly wasn't as much of a fan of this episode, and I'm focusing more on the Captain Jack side of things with this, and I think that ultimately the Captain Jack performance, well, he did a good job with what he had, but it wasn't a great part to be written in that particular episode. I don't think it was particularly needed or necessary. As they say, the use of it was an opportunity to get rid of the companions to be able to have the last 15 minutes, which I think does kind of work, but it's not maybe the greatest way, and I think it will be a real shame if he doesn't turn up again, which I think is unlikely, but I guess you never know. So yes, thank you very much for all of your comments. Sorry I couldn't read all of them out. It would just mean this video would be about 2 hours long, or maybe 10 hours long if I'd read out all your comments. But certainly I think Fugitive of the Judoon got a very, very positive fan reaction, probably generally considered the best episode of the series so far, and certainly sets up a lot of exciting prospects for the future. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. As I say, apologies it's a week later than planned, but I will be doing a Praxeus fan reaction video hopefully on Friday evening. That should be going up, so I'll be getting sort of back up to date with them for that before we get into the next episode, Can You Hear Me, which comes out this weekend. So yes, apart from that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Do comment down below if you enjoyed it, and as always, hit the like button and the subscribe button, and I'll see you again very soon for another one. Goodbye.